Welcome to the Grade 5 enVision Math 2019-20 Scope and Sequence Overview. During this overview, I want to highlight for you some of the key changes and features of the scope and sequence. It's very similar to the past, but we did add a lot of detail, and I want to make sure you understand all that detail so you can best use it. So you probably realize that only cycle 1 has been released so far. That's because of all the details we added. We haven't had a chance to do the other cycles. Cycle 2 detail will be released by October 24th, and then the other two cycles will follow. But if you want to see big picture for the year, even without the detail, you can tell what topics will be taught when by looking at that overview page. This line right here in cycle 4 tells you that if you follow this pacing to a T, you will get through topics 1 through 15 before the PSSA, topic 16 after. So we kind of go by the less is more approach rather than, it's already pretty rushed. So rather than cramming in topic 15 before the PSSA, make sure you do 1 through 15 well. But you can also think about ways to incorporate this content through routines or centers or, review stations. Okay. One question we get a lot is what's up with these dates? They're not the same as the term. So just to summarize it quickly, it's really important for us that you have adequate time to teach everything that's on the benchmark before the benchmark starts. So if we aligned these dates to the term and we had you teaching all the content that falls in the term, then when you give the benchmark potentially on November 12th, you wouldn't have taught everything yet. So we say teach topics 1 through 5.3 by November 8th. That way you're ready to potentially give the benchmark on November 12th. If you don't give the benchmark right away, you give it, say, November 25th, that's fine, but please try to resist the temptation to just keep reviewing and reviewing and reviewing because you'll fall behind. The intention is that you keep moving, even if you haven't given the benchmark yet. That way you'll have time to get through the content before the PSSA. All right, the next page. It is the same overall function as in previous years, but it looks a little bit different. There's just these two main columns. There's the Pennsylvania column and the Common Core column. Some schools like to use one or the other for their planning, but what we hope this page shows you is that they're really basically the same. They just have different tags. So in Pennsylvania, we have the standards, the core standards. And in cycle 1, you are teaching just two standards in cycle 1. That means on the cycle 1 benchmark, there will only be content reflecting 2 PA core standards. But as you probably know, those standards are pretty broad in general. What does that really look like? So here are the eligible content that align to that PA core standard. Those are all the eligible content that you'll be teaching and could be tested on in cycle 1. In the right column, you'll see how that PA content aligns to the Common Core content. This PA core standard is very similar in language to this Common Core cluster, the 5NBTA cluster. Understand the place value system. That is super broad. What does that really mean? Here are the Common Core standards that align to that Common Core cluster. So 5NBTA, 1, 2, 3, and so on. The other thing that this page shows you, in addition to what you're teaching in cycle 1, is the aspect of rigor that each standard is aligned to. So in the last year, you probably talked a lot about rigor. Rigor is one of the 3 Common Core shifts: focus, coherence, and rigor. We talk about achieving a balance, a 3-legged stool. Kids need to have conceptual, procedural, and applied understandings. You don't want to lean too heavily on one of those legs or ignore one of the other legs. You want that balance. But you don't necessarily achieve that balance every single day because some standards are more aligned to one aspect than another. So 5NBTA1, that's largely a conceptual standard. It's not about doing a memorized procedure or applying something to the real world. It's really understanding and recognizing things about numbers, how they work, why they work, what makes sense, how I could model it. So when I'm teaching this standard, I want to make sure that I'm asking conceptual questions and I'm giving conceptual tasks. Well, here's one that's procedural. Fluently multiply multi-digit whole numbers. Okay, great. That is a procedure. That is about doing an algorithm, memorizing it, and becoming fluent. And actually in 5th grade, this is the first time that students are expected to use the standard algorithm. This is truly procedural. You might notice that there's no application in cycle 1. I think it's interesting to look at the trends by cycle for aspect of rigor. Seems like you have a lot of conceptual in cycle 1, but you also have a lot of procedural. It's kind of a balance between those two. But it's interesting to see that in grade 5, cycle 1, it's not really about word problems. All right, next page. This box precedes each topic, and it's my attempt to summarize that topic for you. In topic 1, you have 11 total days. Now, the intention is that you have enVision there for your primary resource to use during those 11 days, but even if you pull from other sources and don't rely on enVision, you want to allot yourself about 11 days to cover these standards and eligible content. These two boxes on the right provide interesting information. The first is related to focus. So the Common Core, I talked about rigor, but one of the other shifts is focus. Where should you spend your time? What is the most important content? The Common Core has identified whether clusters are major, supporting, or additional. And in topic number 1, the cluster that you're teaching is major. That means that if you need a little extra time on top of these 11 days, I'm not talking 20 or 30, but 12 days, 13 days. Okay, do it, because this is major. This is incredibly important content. And you might want to keep revisiting it throughout the year as well. It's that important. This box over here I find to be really helpful because it tells me, okay, by the end of this topic, you're telling me I need to teach these standards. Will I ever see them again? Will enVision teach them again, or are they done? This tells me that they will revisit this standard, but the other ones, they won't. So if I have students who don't completely understand 111, 113, 4, and 5, I need to find ways to incorporate them. In the scope and sequence, I try to highlight opportunities to revisit standards, but you need to do it really mindfully because enVision won't. This is the only one they revisit. All right, so then you get to the actual lessons themselves. The topic number, title, objective, and eligible content comes straight from enVision. You can get that from the textbook. I added these bullets here to provide for you some kind of tips and tricks and strategies to help you use the program as effectively and efficiently as possible. Sometimes I talk about coherence. So in this part right here, it mentions something that happened in 4th grade. Coherence is another one of those Common Core shifts. How can we connect to students what came before and what comes after? I also talk about things like which questions you might want to use, or what denominators kids used in previous grades, what manipulatives you want to use, tips and tricks for the solve and share. Lots of things that I think could be helpful. I realize it's a lot of words and it could seem overwhelming, but the hope is that it helps you with your planning and it helps you with your teaching and doesn't overwhelm you. I would appreciate any feedback on those bullets. As I work on the bullets for cycle 2, I would love to know which ones were more or less helpful so I can cater future feedback and information to what is actually helpful to you. At the end of each topic, I have these overall notes. Try to read those before the topic because they give you the summary. And then these recommended math instructional routines. If you had a Carnegie specialist, they probably called them number sense routines. They're quick, less than 10-minute routines that you could do anytime during class, although people tend to like to do them at the beginning. It's a way to get kids thinking and talking about math. It's a way to provide some of those prerequisite skills to see what kids already know about content. There's a ton of routines that are helpful. I try to mention which ones are most helpful for that topic. You can find information about the routines in the curriculum engine. As you go through the rest of the topics, you will come to the overall cycles for the year, which standards and eligible content are taught when. Just a big picture overview for you. And that's it. That was a lot. It was 10 minutes, but I hope it was helpful in showing for you how the Common Core shifts of focus, coherence, and rigor appear in your scope and sequence, of outlining how the dates work, how the alignment works, and just helping you make decisions through these bullets. Good luck in cycle 1. Again, questions or feedback are welcome at math@PhilaSD, and have a wonderful first cycle.